The message came at midnight. A short buzz on a phone that rarely received anything except contract orders and federal alerts. But this one was different. It was from an unknown number, a child's number. He's beating my mama. I'm under the bed. Please help. The Mafia boss, Benjamin Siegel, stared at the screen. He frowned at first, thinking it was a mistake, a prank, a wrong number. Then another text arrived, shorter, shakier. He found us. Benjamin's breath stilled. He had seen fear. He had caused fear, but he had never seen this. A child begging a stranger because she had no one else left. He typed only 4 words. I'm on my way. No hesitation, no questions, no second thoughts. His guards froze as he stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door. Boss, where you going? He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because something in that child's words, that trembling desperation, hit a part of me he thought had died years ago. As his car tore through the streets, another message appeared. I hear footsteps. Please hurry. Benjamin clenched the steering wheel. His pulse hammered. Lights blurred past. By the time he reached the address, he already knew. Tonight, he wasn't arriving as a mafia boss. He was arriving as the only hope that little girl had left. And what he found inside that house changed everything. Stay with me until the end, because what Benjamin discovered in that bedroom will make your heart stop and start again. Benjamin Siegel had built his empire on one brutal truth. To rule is to be alone. For over 2 decades, he had controlled the streets with perfectly tailored suits that had old scars beneath intricate neck tattoos. His name alone could silence a room full of hardened criminals. His reputation had been carved from blood, betrayal, and the kind of calculated violence that kept weaker men awake at night. The penthouse office where Benjamin spent most of his nights sat 43 stories above the city, a glass and steel fortress that overlooked an empire he'd built brick by bloody brick. The panoramic windows reflected the glittering skyline, but Benjamin rarely looked at it anymore. Beauty had stopped mattering years ago. What mattered was control. What mattered was power. What mattered was making sure no one ever got close enough to hurt him again. His desk was black marble, spotless except for 3 phones. One for legitimate business, though there was little legitimate about the construction contracts and union deals that lined his pockets. One for the family, the soldiers and captains who reported to him daily. And one encrypted phone, the one that never rang unless someone was about to die or someone needed to disappear. That was the phone that buzzed tonight. The tattoos that crawled up Benjamin's neck were a map of his past, each line and symbol marking a battle, a betrayal, a loss. To outsiders, they looked like art. To those who knew, they were a warning. The serpent coiled around his throat represented the first man he'd killed, a rival who thought Benjamin was too young to lead. The Roman numerals hidden behind his ear were the date his wife walked out, taking their daughter with her. The Celtic knot at the base of his skull was for the old boss, the man who taught him everything before Benjamin put a bullet in his chest and took his throne. People called him the Sovereign of Shadows. The name fit. He moved through the underworld like smoke, untouchable, unseen until it was too late. He'd survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 federal investigations, and a gang war that left half the city's crew leaders dead or in prison. Benjamin didn't survive by being kind. He survived by being ruthless. His guards knew not to interrupt him after midnight. His captains knew not to call unless the world was ending. His enemies knew not to cross him at all. So when he stood up tonight, coat in hand, jaws set in a way that meant blood was coming, every man in that outer office felt their stomach drop. Boss, where you going? Marcus, his head of security, a mountain of a man with a scar bisecting his face, stepped forward. He'd been with Benjamin for 15 years, saved his life twice, and even he looked uncertain. Benjamin didn't answer. He was already moving toward the private elevator, his phone clutched in one hand. That child's message burned into his vision. I hear footsteps. Please hurry. The elevator descended in silence. Benjamin's reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls. He looked every bit the monster people whispered about. The tailored 3-piece suit, charcoal gray and perfectly pressed. The platinum watch that cost more than most people made in a year. The cold, unreadable expression that had been his mask for so long, he wasn't sure where the mask ended and the man began. But tonight, something cracked. He'd spent 20 years building walls around his heart, after his daughter was taken from him. After court said he was too dangerous to be a father, after his ex-wife changed her number and disappeared into witness protection, Benjamin had made a choice. He would never care again. He would never be vulnerable again. He would be power incarnate, untouchable and alone. To rule is to be alone. He'd lived by those words, breathed them, became them. But that little girl hiding under a bed didn't know who Benjamin Siegel was. She didn't know about the bodies, the bribes, the empire built on fear. She just knew she was scared and her mama was being hurt and she needed help. She'd texted a monster, and the monster had answered. Benjamin's car was waiting in the private garage, a black Mercedes with bulletproof glass and an engine that could outrun anything on four wheels. He didn't wait for his driver. He slid behind the wheel himself, punched the address into his GPS, and floored it. The streets were empty at this hour, just scattered taxis and delivery trucks. Benjamin's hands gripped the leather steering wheel, so tight his knuckles went white. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every turn felt too slow. I hear footsteps. That message looped in his mind like a nightmare. How many times had his own daughter hidden? How many times had she been scared while he was out building his empire, drowning in blood money and empty power? He'd told himself she was safer without him. He'd told himself she'd have a better life away from his world. But late at night, when the city slept and the ghosts came out, Benjamin knew the truth. He was a coward. He'd let her go because he was terrified of failing her the way his own father had failed him. The GPS announced he was 2 minutes away. Benjamin's pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't a hit. This wasn't business. This was something else entirely. Something he hadn't felt in so long, he'd forgotten what it was called. Hope. The house appeared on his left, a small two-story in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Lights were on inside. A car sat crooked in the driveway. Driver's door still open like someone had arrived in a hurry. Benjamin parked across the street, engine still running. Eyes scanning every window, every shadow. Years of survival instincts kicked in. He noted the exits, the sight lines, the neighbors' houses dark and silent. No one was coming to help. No one had called the police. In neighborhoods like this, people learn to mind their own business. He pulled his phone out one more time and typed, "I'm here. Stay quiet. Stay hidden." Then Benjamin Siegel, the sovereign of shadows, the man who'd built an empire on the principle that caring was weakness, stepped out of his car and walked toward the house where a terrified little girl was waiting for a miracle. Tonight, he would be that miracle. Or he would die trying. 30 minutes earlier, Kara Paul had been doing her homework at the kitchen table. She was 9 years old, small for her age, with brown hair that her mama always braided before school. Tonight it hung loose around her shoulders because Mama had been too tired after her shift at the diner. Kara didn't mind. She'd learned how to ask for things when Mama came home with that look in her eyes, the one that meant her feet hurt and her back ached and she just needed to sit down for a minute. Kara had made them both peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. Mama said she was such a good helper, such a smart girl. They'd eaten together, and Mama had helped with her math homework, the hard kind with fractions that never made sense no matter how many times her teacher explained it. Then the car pulled into the driveway. Mama's face changed. The smile disappeared, replaced by something Kara had seen too many times. Fear, not the kind from scary movies or thunderstorms. The real kind, the kind that made her Mama's hand shake as she stood up from the table. "Go to your room, baby," Mama said, her voice tight. "Lock the door. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "Mama, who is it?" "Now, Kara." Kara knew that voice. She grabbed her phone, the cheap one Mama had bought her for emergencies, and ran up the stairs. She heard the front door open, heard a man's voice, loud and angry, heard Mama trying to sound calm, saying something about how he couldn't be here, how they'd talked about this. Then the yelling started. Kara locked her bedroom door with shaking fingers and dove under her bed, squeezing into the narrow space between the mattress and the floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She could hear everything through the thin walls of their little house. The man's voice getting louder. Mama pleading. Something crashing, maybe a plate or a glass. You think you can just leave? The man roared. You think you can take my money and disappear? I gave it back, Ray. Every penny. Please, just go. Ray. Kara knew that name. He was Mama's old boyfriend, the one who used to live with him before Mama finally kicked him out 6 months ago. He'd been mean then, always yelling, always making Mama cry. But he'd never hit her. Not until tonight. The sound of the slap echoed up the stairs like a gunshot. Kara pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. She heard her Mama cry out, heard her fall. You embarrass me, Ray snarled. Running your mouth to your friends, telling them I was no good, making me look like a fool. I never... Ray, please. Another hit, then another. Kara squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run down there, wanted to help, but she was too small, too scared. What could a 9-year-old girl do against a grown man? Her phone was still clutched in her hand. She stared at it in the dim light filtering under her door, her mind racing. She could call 911. But last time Mama had called the police on Ray, he'd been out in 3 hours and came back even angrier. Mama said the cops didn't care about people like them, people with no money and no one important to vouch for them. Kara's fingers trembled as she opened her messages. She didn't know what else to do. She couldn't call Grandma because Grandma lived 2 states away and didn't have a car. She couldn't call Mama's friends because they all had their own problems. The neighbors never helped, never even looked their way when things got loud. So Kara did something desperate. She started typing random numbers, just punching digits with shaking fingers, praying that someone, anyone, would see it and help. The first number she tried didn't go through. The second one bounced back as disconnected. She was sobbing now, trying to be quiet, trying not to let Ray hear her upstairs. Downstairs, furniture scraped across the floor. Mama was screaming. Kara typed another random number, longer this time, and before she could think about what to say, her fingers moved across the screen. He's beating my Mama. I'm under the bed. Please come. She hit send and held her breath. The message showed as delivered. Someone had this number. Someone real. But would they even see it? Would they care? Footsteps thundered on the stairs. Where is she? Ray bellowed. Where's that little brat? Kara heard her Mama's voice, desperate and broken. She's not here. She's at a friend's house. Ray, please leave her alone. You're lying. A door slammed open down the hall. The bathroom. Then another door. The spare bedroom they used for storage. Kara's bedroom door was next. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the phone. She typed again faster. Messier. He found us. The doorknob rattled. Ray was trying to get in. He pounded on the door, the whole frame shaking. Open this door right now. Kara pressed herself flatter against the floor, trying to disappear into the shadows. She could see his boots through the crack at the bottom of the door, could hear him breathing, angry and ragged. Then the phone buzzed in her hand. She nearly dropped it. A message. Someone had responded. I am the storm. Kara didn't know what that meant. Didn't know who this person was. But someone had answered. Someone was out there. The bedroom door splintered. Ray had kicked it. The lock held, but barely. One more kick and it would give. Kara typed with numb fingers. I hear footsteps. Please hurry. I'm going to count to 3, Ray shouted. Then I'm coming in there, and if you don't get out from wherever you're hiding, you're going to regret it. 1. Kara could hear her Mama crying somewhere downstairs. 2. The phone buzzed again. I'm here. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Kara stared at the message. Here? How could anyone be here? She just sent those texts 2 minutes ago. Was this person lying? Was this some kind of trick? 3. The door exploded inward, the lock ripping free from the frame. Ray stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hall light, a big man with wild eyes and bloody knuckles. He scanned the room, breathing hard. Kara held perfectly still under the bed. She could see his boots moving across the floor, coming closer. He checked the closet first, throwing the door open. shoving clothes aside. Then he checked behind the dresser. He was coming toward the bed. Kara bit down on her sleeve to keep from whimpering. She pressed the phone against her chest. The only connection to whoever that stranger was, whoever had said they were here. Ray crouched down. His face appeared at the edge of the bed, peering into the darkness underneath. His eyes locked onto hers. Found you? He reached under bed, his thick fingers grabbing for her arm. And then the lights downstairs went out. Everything went dark and silent, except for the sound of Ray's breathing. He froze, his hand inches from Kara's shoulder. What the hell? Footsteps. Not running, not stomping. Slow, deliberate footsteps climbing the stairs. One at a time. Each one measured, purposeful, like whoever was at all the time in the world. Ray stood up, his attention shifting to the hallway. Who's there? Sarah, is that you? The footsteps kept coming. Steady, unhurried, getting closer. Ray backed away from the bed, toward the broken door. I said, who's there? A figure appeared in the doorway. Even in the darkness, Kara could see him. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that looked expensive even in silhouette. But it was his face that made Ray take another step back. It was cold, emotionless, like he was looking at an insect he was about to step on. The man's voice was quiet when he spoke, barely above a whisper, but somehow it filled the entire room. You made a mistake tonight. Ray tried to puff himself up, tried to sound tough. This ain't your business. This is between me and my family. No, the man said. This is between you and me now. He took a step forward. Ray swung. A wild, desperate punch aimed at the stranger's face. The man caught his fist midair without even looking at it. His other hand shot out, gripping Ray by the throat, lifting him half off the ground. You hurt women. You hurt children. The man's voice never rose above that whisper. Men like you don't deserve mercy. Under the bed, Kara watched as a stranger in the expensive suit dragged Ray out of her room and into the hallway. She heard sounds, muffled thuds, a choked gasp, then silence. A moment later, the man reappeared in her doorway. He crouched down, his face level with hers, and this time his expression was different, softer, almost gentle. Kara, he said quietly, you're safe now. You can come out. She didn't move at first, couldn't move, but then he held out his hand, and something in his eyes told her the truth. This was the storm, and the storm had come for her. Benjamin needed to rewind the clock, back to the moment that phone buzzed in his penthouse office, back to the seconds before everything changed. Because what happened in those first 5 minutes after Kara's text arrived determined whether she lived or died. Most people didn't understand how the underworld actually worked. They thought it was all guns and violence, territory wars and drug deals. They were wrong. The real power in organized crime was a muscle. It was information. And Benjamin Siegel had spent 20 years building the most sophisticated intelligence network on the East Coast. They called it the Shadow Network, though Benjamin had never liked the name. It sounded too dramatic, too theatrical. But the name stuck because that's exactly what it was. A web of eyes and ears scattered across the city, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. The moment Benjamin read Kara's first message, his mind shifted into a mode he perfected over decades. Emotion got locked away. The part of him that felt something for this terrified child got buried beneath layers of tactical thinking. Right now, she wasn't a little girl. She was a mission, and missions required cold calculation. He had 3 phones on his desk. He reached for the encrypted one and pulled up an app that didn't exist in any official app store. The screen was black with a single white icon, a simplified chess piece, a king. He tapped it twice. Within 30 seconds, his phone rang. Ghost. A voice answered. No greeting, no names. Just the call sign Benjamin had given him years ago. I need a trace. Mobile number. Sent to me 2 minutes ago. Benjamin's voice was steady, professional. Priority 1. Ghost didn't ask questions. That's why Benjamin paid him $250,000 a year. Send it. Benjamin forwarded Kara's text message, then waited. He could hear Ghost's fingers flying across a keyboard, the clicking rapid and rhythmic. Got it. Signals active. Tower location, northeast quadrant. Give me 60 seconds for triangulation. Benjamin stood up, already moving. He grabbed his coat from the back of his chair, checked his watch. 60 seconds. Then he'd have a general area. Another 2 minutes after that, Ghost would have the exact address. That meant he had 3 minutes to get to his car, and another unknown amount of time to reach wherever Kara was hiding. The outer office was full of his men. A meeting had been scheduled for 12:15 a.m. All the captains gathering to discuss the new shipment routes through the harbor. 20 men in expensive suits. Dangerous men who'd kill for less than a harsh word, all waiting for their boss to tell them what to do next. Benjamin walked past them without a glance. Marcus fell into step beside him, along with 2 other guards. "Boss, the meeting." "Cancel it," Benjamin said, not slowing down. "Sir, they've been waiting for 3 days." Vincent flew in from Miami. Chin drove up from Atlantic City. "I don't care if the Pope flew in from Rome. Cancel it." Marcus knew better than to argue, but concern flickered across his scarred face. "What's happening?" Benjamin stopped at the elevator, jabbed the button. His phone buzzed. Kara's second message. "He found us." His jaw tightened. "Personal matter. I'm going alone." "Boss, you never go anywhere alone." "Tonight I do." The elevator arrived. Benjamin stepped inside, but Marcus blocked the door with his arm. For a moment, the 2 men stared at each other. Marcus had been with him long enough to know when Benjamin's mind was made up, but loyalty meant pushing back when it mattered. "At least tell me where you're going," Marcus said quietly, "in case something happens." Benjamin considered it. Marcus was right. It was stupid to disappear without backup, without anyone knowing where he'd gone. But something about the situation made him want to keep it contained. The fewer people who knew, the better. This wasn't mob business. This was something else. "I'll send you the address once I'm there," Benjamin said. "If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, come looking." Marcus nodded slowly and stepped back. The elevator doors closed. Benjamin's phone rang again. "Ghost, I've got the address." He rattled off a street and number in a neighborhood Benjamin knew. Working class, lower income, the kind of place where people minded their own business because getting involved only brought trouble. Signal stationary. "She's not moving. Can you tap into any security cameras in the area?" "Already on it. Residential street, minimal coverage. Nearest traffic cam is 2 blocks away. I can route you around any police patrols if you want to avoid attention." "Do it. And Ghost." "Yeah." This conversation never happened. What conversation? The line went dead. Benjamin's car was waiting in the private garage, engine already running. His driver stood by the door, but Benjamin waved him off and slid behind the wheel himself. He punched the address into the GPS, memorized a route, then deleted it. Old habits. The city streets were mostly empty at this hour. Benjamin pushed the Mercedes hard, weaving through what little traffic existed, running red lights when no one was around to see. The GPS said 12 minutes. He'd make it in 8. His phone buzzed again. He risked a glance while stopped at a light. "I hear footsteps. Please hurry." Benjamin's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. He typed back one-handed. "I am the storm." It wasn't just a reply. It was a promise. And Benjamin Siegel always kept his promises. The Shadow Network wasn't just Ghost and his computer skills. It was hundreds of people, most of whom didn't even know they worked for Benjamin. The bartender who overheard conversations and passed along interesting details. The parking attendant who noted license plates. The court clerk who made copies of sealed documents. The cop who looked the other way at the right moments. Information flowed up through channels, filtered and sorted, until it reached Benjamin's ears. He knew which politicians were taking bribes, which businessmen were skimming from their partners, which rival gang leaders were planning moves against him. Knowledge was armor. Knowledge was a weapon. But tonight, he was using that network for something different. Not to destroy an enemy or protect his empire. He was using it to save one little girl who'd texted the wrong number and accidentally reached the one man in the city with the resources and the will to actually help her. His phone lit up with a text from Ghost. A map image showing his current location and the fastest route to Kara's house. Updated in real time to avoid a police checkpoint 3 blocks ahead. Beneath it, another message. 2 patrol cars in the area, both occupied with a noise complaint 4 streets over. You have a clear window. Benjamin didn't respond. He was already turning down the side street Ghost had indicated, cutting through a residential area with darkened houses and empty driveways. The Mercedes engine purred, powerful but quiet. He'd had the exhaust specially modified to reduce noise. You didn't survive in his business by announcing your arrival. 5 blocks away. 4. 3. He started planning. The house would likely have a front door and a back door, maybe a side entrance through a garage. Windows on the first and second floors. Multiple entry points meant multiple escape routes for the target, but also meant multiple angles of approach for Benjamin. He needed to be smart about this. Going in loud would alert the neighbors, possibly bring police. Going in quiet meant taking his time, and time was something Kara didn't have. The solution crystallized in his mind. He'd cut the power. Darkness would be his ally, confusion his weapon. The abuser would be disoriented. Kara would stay hidden. And Benjamin would move through that house like he'd been doing this his entire life. Because he had. 2 blocks away. Benjamin killed his headlights, slowing down to reduce any noise. He scanned the street, looking for the house number Ghost had given him. There, small 2-story, lights on inside, a car in the driveway with the driver's door hanging open like someone had arrived in a hurry and didn't care about anything except getting inside. Benjamin parked across the street, engine still running for a quick escape if needed. He pulled out his phone and sent Marcus the address with 2 words, 30 minutes. Then he opened his glove compartment. Inside was a small black case. He flipped it open, revealing a set of tools he'd carried for years. Lockpicks, a glass cutter, a compact LED flashlight, and a knife, folded and wickedly sharp, the kind of blade that could open a man's throat before he had time to scream. Benjamin took the knife and the flashlight. He left everything else. He stepped out of the car, closing the door with barely a sound, and looked up at the house. Through the upstairs window, he could see shadows moving, heard raised voices, muffled by distance but clearly angry. Benjamin moved across the street like smoke, staying low, staying quiet. He circled the house once, noting the power meter on the side, the fence in the backyard, the basement window that could serve as an alternate exit. Then he found the electrical box. 1 quick pull, and the entire house went dark. No lights, no sound except for confused shouting from inside. Benjamin moved to the front door. It was unlocked. Amateurs. He pushed it open, silent as death, and stepped into the darkness. The house smelled like fear and violence. He could hear someone crying on the floor of the living room. Kara's mother, he assumed. Upstairs, heavy footsteps and a man's angry voice. Then lighter footsteps. Small, quick, a child running. Benjamin started up the stairs, taking them one at a time, each step deliberate and measured. He wasn't in a hurry. Hurrying meant mistakes. Hurrying meant noise. He heard the bedroom door splinter, heard the man's voice counting. 1. Benjamin reached the top of the stairs. 2. He moved down the hallway toward the light spilling from the broken door. 3. Benjamin appeared in the doorway just as the man crouched down to look under the bed. He could see everything with perfect clarity. The little girl pressed flat against the floor, phone clutched to her chest. The man reaching for her, the terror in her eyes. And then she saw Benjamin. Her eyes went wide, not with more fear, but with something else, something that looked almost like hope. The man sensed him somehow, that animal instinct that tells you when predator is near. He stood up, turned around, and froze. Benjamin looked at him the way he'd look at garbage that needed to be taken out. You made a mistake tonight. Ray Donovan had made a lot of bad decisions in his 42 years on Earth, but coming back to Sarah Paul's house tonight might have been his worst. He hadn't planned it this way. He'd told himself he just wanted to talk, to explain things, to make her understand that they belonged together. But the moment he'd pulled into that driveway and seen the lights on in the kitchen, something in him had snapped. 6 months. 6 months since she'd kicked him out, changed the locks, Told him never to come back. 6 months of sleeping on his brother's couch. Drinking too much. Losing his job at the warehouse because he couldn't stop thinking about how Sarah had embarrassed him in front of everyone. His friends had laughed at him. Said he'd gotten soft. Let a woman push him around. Ray wasn't soft. He'd show her. He'd show all of them. That's what he'd been thinking when he'd kicked open the front door. That's what he'd been thinking when Sarah had backed away from him, eyes wide, hands up like she could somehow stop what was coming. The first slap had felt good. The second one even better. All that rage, all that humiliation, flowing out of him and into her. But then she said something about Kara, something about the girl not being home, and Ray knew she was lying. He'd heard footsteps upstairs, heard a door close. The little brat was hiding from him, just like her mama, thinking she could ignore Ray Donovan and get away with it. He'd left Sarah cry on the living room floor and taken the stairs 2 at a time. His knuckles were already swelling, blood from where he'd hit her smeared across his fingers. Good. Let the kid see what happens when you disrespect him. The bathroom door was closed. Ray kicked it open. Empty. Just a pink shower curtain and cheap shampoo bottles. He moved to the next room, the spare bedroom that Sarah used for storage. He threw the door open so hard it bounced off the wall. Nothing but boxes and old furniture. That left one room, Kara's bedroom. Door closed, locked from the inside. Ray could see the light under the door frame. She was in there. He knew it. Open this door right now. No answer. Just silence and the sound of his own breathing, harsh and angry. Ray pounded on the door with his fist. The thin wood rattled in its frame. These cheap houses weren't built to last. Nothing was built to last anymore. Everything fell apart. Everything left you. Everything turned against you. He took a step back and kicked the door just below the handle. The frame splintered, but held. One more kick would do it. Maybe 2. I'm going to count to 3, he shouted. Then I'm coming in there, and if you don't get out from wherever you're hiding, you're going to regret it. Downstairs, Sarah was screaming something, but Ray wasn't listening anymore. There was a roaring in his ears, a red haze at the edges of his vision. He'd come too far to stop now. He'd crossed too many lines. 1. Another kick. The door frame cracked. 2. He could hear crying now, soft and muffled, coming from inside the room. The kid was terrified. Good. She should be. Maybe this would teach her some respect. 3. Ray threw his full weight against the door. The lock tore free from the frame, and the door exploded inward, slamming against the wall inside. The room was small, pink walls with crayon drawings taped up, a bed with unicorn comforter, a small desk cluttered with homework and colored pencils. Everything a little girl's room should be, except for the terror that hung in the air like smoke. Ray scanned the room, breathing hard. Where was she? The closet door was already open, clothes pushed to one side. He checked behind the dresser anyway, shoving it aside with a screech of wood on cheap carpet. Then his eyes fell on the bed. Of course. Kids always thought hiding under bed would save them. Like a little bit of darkness could make them invisible. Ray had hidden under his own bed once. His old man had come home drunk and looking for someone to hit. It hadn't saved him then either. He crouched down, knees popping, in the dim light from the hallway. He could just make out a small shape press against the floor, trying to disappear into the shadows. Found you. He reached under the bed, fingers stretching toward her arm. She was holding something. A phone, maybe, pressed against her chest like it could protect her. As if anything could protect her now. Ray's fingers were inches from her shoulder when everything went dark. The lights didn't flicker or fade. They just died, all at once, plunging the house into complete blackness. Even the streetlights outside seemed to have vanished. Ray froze, his hand still extended under the bed. What the hell? He pulled back, standing up slowly, trying to orient himself in the darkness. His eyes hadn't adjusted yet. Everything was shapes and shadows. Sarah, is that you? He moved toward where he thought the door was. Did you cut the power? You think that's going to stop me? No answer from downstairs. Just silence. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Not Sarah's quick, nervous footsteps. Not the kid's light patter. These were different. Slow. Heavy. deliberate, each step measured and purposeful, like whoever was at all the time in the world, coming up the stairs. Ray's heart kicked against his ribs. Who's there? The footsteps didn't speed up or slow down, just kept coming, steady as a metronome. Step, 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 getting closer. Ray backed away from the broken bedroom door, moving toward the bed where Kara was still hiding. His tough guy swagger was evaporating fast, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Fear, real fear, the kind that made your mouth go dry and your hands shake. I said, "Who's there?" His voice cracked. He hated how weak he sounded. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. A pause. Then they started down the hallway, coming straight toward Kara's room. Ray could see a silhouette now, backlit by whatever ambient light was filtering in from outside. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of controlled grace that spoke of violence held in check. Not the violence of anger, like Ray's. Something colder, more precise, professional. The figure stopped in the doorway. Ray still couldn't make out his face, but he could feel the weight of his gaze. It was like being studied by a predator, deciding whether you were worth the effort of killing. When the man finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle, but there was something underneath it, something that made every word sound like a threat. "You made a mistake tonight." Ray tried to puff himself up, tried to sound tough, but his voice came out thin and desperate. "This ain't your business. This is between me and my family." The man took a step forward, and even in the darkness, Ray could see something in his posture that made his blood run cold. This wasn't some neighbor coming to play hero. This wasn't a cop who'd knock on the door and ask questions. This was something else entirely. "No," the man said. "This is between you and me now." He took another step into the room, and the ambient light from the window caught his face for just a second. Ray saw perfectly tailored clothes, a face that looked carved from stone, and eyes that held no mercy whatsoever. Ray swung without thinking. A wild, desperate punch aimed at the stranger's face, putting all his weight behind it. His fist had broken two of Sarah's teeth. It would break this guy's jaw. The man caught his fist midair, just reached out and stopped it cold, like catching a baseball. His grip was iron, his expression unchanged. Then his other hand shot out, faster than Ray could track, and closed around his throat. Ray's feet left the floor. The man was lifting him, one-handed, like he weighed nothing. Ray grabbed at the hand around his neck, trying to pry those fingers loose, but it was like trying to bend steel. The man's face was inches from his now. Ray could see him clearly in the darkness. The expensive suit, the tattoos crawling up his neck, the absolute emptiness in his eyes. "You hurt women," the man said, his voice never rising above that terrifying whisper. "You hurt children, men like you don't deserve mercy." Ray tried to speak, tried to beg, but nowhere was getting past that iron grip on his throat. His vision was already going spotty at the edges. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the man's face, expression unchanged, as he dragged Ray's body out of the room and into the hallway. Under the bed, Kara heard sounds. Thuds. A choked gasp. Then silence. She lay there in the darkness, heart hammering, not daring to move. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time had stopped meaning anything. Then footsteps again, slower this time, coming back toward her room. A figure appeared in the doorway. The same man. He crouched down, his face level with hers, and for the first time his expression changed. The coldness melted away, replaced by something almost gentle. "Kara," he said quietly, "you're safe now. You can come out." His hand extended toward her, not grabbing, not forcing, just offering. Kara stared at that hand, at the tattoos on his knuckles, at the expensive watch on his wrist, at the face of the stranger who'd answered a desperate text from a little girl who had nowhere else to turn. She reached out and took his hand. The storm had come, and the storm had saved her. Kara's hand is felt impossibly small, fragile, like holding something that could break with the slightest pressure. Benjamin helped her out from under the bed, moving slowly, giving her time to process that she was safe. Her legs were shaking so badly she could barely stand. Tear tracks streaked her face, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked up at him with a mixture of fear and wonder. This little girl who'd texted a stranger and gotten a monster in return. But not the monster she'd expected. A different kind entirely. "Is he gone?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "He's gone," Benjamin said. He didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Ray Donovan wouldn't be bothering anyone ever again. "My mama. He hurt my mama." "I know. Let's go check on her." Benjamin led Kara down the stairs, his hand still holding hers. The house was still dark, the power still cut. He pulled out his small flashlight, casting a narrow beam across the living room. Sarah Paul was on the floor by the couch, curled into herself, arms wrapped around her ribs. Her face was a mess of blood and bruises. When she saw Kara, she tried to sit up, tried to smile through split lips. "Baby. Oh God, baby, are you okay?" Kara ran to her mother, and the two of them collapsed into each other, sobbing. Benjamin stood back, giving them space, his face impassive. But something was happening inside him, something he'd spent 20 years trying to bury. He touched the tattoos on his neck without thinking, fingers tracing the lines he knew by memory. Each one a scar turned into art, each one a reminder of what he'd lost. The serpent, the Roman numerals, the Celtic knot, and one more, hidden just behind his ear, where most people never saw it. A single date in small, precise numbers, August 14th, 2003, the day Benjamin Siegel's daughter was taken from him. Her name was Emma. The memory hit him like a physical blow, sharp and sudden despite all the years that had passed. He was standing in the stranger's living room, watching a mother hold her daughter, and suddenly he was somewhere else entirely. Another time, another life. 12 years ago. Benjamin had been 34, already deep into the life, but not yet the man he would become. He'd been married to Rachel, a woman he'd met before the money and the violence, back when he was just a soldier trying to climb the ladder. They'd had Emma when Benjamin was 28, a perfect little girl with dark curls and her mother's eyes. She was 6 years old when everything fell apart. Rachel had begged him to leave the life, said they had enough money, could disappear, start over somewhere clean. But Benjamin had been too ambitious, too hungry for power. He'd told her one more year, one more big score. Then they'd go, but there was always one more year, always one more score. The FBI had been building a case against the old boss, and Benjamin's name kept appearing in surveillance reports. Phone taps, photographs, witness statements. The feds were getting close, and Rachel knew what that meant. She'd taken Emma and left while Benjamin was handling business in Philadelphia. No note, no warning. Just an empty house and divorce papers served by a process server who looked terrified to be there. Benjamin had tried to find them, used every resource at his disposal, called in every favor. But Rachel had gone into witness protection, made a deal with the prosecutors. She'd testify about what she knew in exchange for a new identity and a safe place to raise their daughter, away from him. The custody hearing had been brutal. Benjamin's lawyer had argued that Rachel was keeping the child from her father out of spite, but the prosecutor had counter-argued with evidence, police reports from domestic incidents in the neighborhood, though Benjamin had never been arrested, photographs of known criminals entering and leaving the Siegel residence, testimony from social workers about the environment Emma was growing up in. The judge's decision had been swift and final. Rachel was granted full custody. Benjamin was deemed an unfit parent due to his criminal associations. He was forbidden from contacting Emma until she turned 18 and could make her own choice about whether to have a relationship with him. 12 years. That's how long it had been since he'd held his daughter. Benjamin had walked out of that courtroom with his jaw clenched and his hands fisted at his sides. He'd gotten into his car, driven to his apartment, and sat in the dark for 6 hours without moving. The next day, he'd gone to a tattoo artist he knew, a man who specialized in covering scars from old gang violence. He'd pointed to his neck and said one word, everything. The serpent came first, coiling around his throat, its scales intricate and detailed. It represented the first kill, yes, but also the choice he'd made to stay in the life. The choice that had cost him everything. The Roman numerals behind his ear marked the date of the custody hearing. August 14th, 2003, the day he'd lost Emma. The artist had placed him small and discreet, but Benjamin touched him every single day, a private reminder of his failure. The Celtic knot at the base of his skull came a year later, after he'd killed the old boss and taken control. It represented the point of no return, the moment when Benjamin stopped being a man who made bad choices and became someone else entirely, someone who chose power over redemption. Over the years, more ink was added. Each tattoo told a story, usually one soaked in blood, but they all served the same purpose. They covered the real scars, the ones that ran deeper than skin, because the truth was, Benjamin's neck had been scarred long before the tattoos. An assassination attempt 7 years ago, a wire pulled tight around his throat by a rival's enforcer. Benjamin had survived, but the scar had remained, an ugly, puckered line of tissue that wrapped almost completely around his neck. He could have left it, could have worn it as a badge of honor, proof that he was unkillable. Instead, he'd covered it with art, turned the mark of someone trying to end his life into something beautiful and intentional. Because if there was one thing Benjamin Siegel had learned, it was that you couldn't erase the past. You could only choose what story to tell about it. The tattoos told people he was dangerous. They told people he'd survived things that would kill ordinary men. They told people to keep their distance. But they also hid the truth, that underneath the ink, underneath the reputation and the power and the fear, Benjamin Siegel was just a man who'd lost his daughter because he'd chosen wrong. And every day since, he'd been living with that choice. Standing in Sarah Paul's living room, Benjamin touched the tattoos again. The memory of Emma's face was fading, no matter how hard he tried to hold on to it. She'd be 18 now, an adult, maybe in college, maybe working somewhere, living a normal life far away from the darkness that defined her father's world. He wondered if she ever thought about him, if Rachel had told her the truth or painted him as a monster. Maybe both. Maybe Rachel had told her that her father was dangerous, that he'd chosen violence over family, that she was better off without him. And maybe Rachel had been right. But tonight, looking at Kara clinging to her mother, Benjamin saw a chance. Not for redemption. That ship had sailed years ago. But for something else. Something smaller, but no less important. A chance to be the man he should have been for Emma. He couldn't change the past. Couldn't undo the choices that had led to that courtroom, that judgment, that permanent separation. But he could make sure that Kara Paul didn't lose her mother the way Emma had lost her father. He could be the storm that protected instead of destroyed. Sarah looked up at him from the floor, her battered face struggling to form words. "Who are you?" Benjamin crouched down to her level, making himself less threatening. Someone who got a text. Someone who decided to answer. "Ray, where is he?" "Gone. He won't come back." Sarah's eyes widened. She understood what gone meant in this context. But instead of fear, Benjamin saw something else in her expression. Relief. And maybe a flicker of guilt for feeling relieved. "You saved us," she whispered. Benjamin shook his head. "Your daughter saved you. She was brave enough to ask for help. I just happened to be the one who answered." He stood up, pulling out his phone. 2 calls to make. First to Ghost, to clean up any digital traces of tonight. Second to Marcus, to send someone to restore the power and make sure no nosy neighbors decided to call the police. But before he could dial, Kara spoke. Her voice was small but clear in the darkness. "Why did you come? You don't even know us." Benjamin looked at her, this little girl who'd been terrified minutes ago and now was brave enough to ask questions. He thought about Emma, about the tattoos on his neck, about all the years he'd spent building walls around his heart. Because someone needed help, he said finally, and I was in a position to give it. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was true enough. Kara studied him with solemn eyes, then nodded like she understood something adults spent years trying to figure out. "Thank you." 2 words. Simple, but they hit Benjamin harder than any punch he'd ever taken. He touched the tattoos on his neck one more time, feeling the raised lines beneath his fingers, feeling the scars underneath the ink. feeling the weight of 12 years without his daughter. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Benjamin Siegel felt something other than emptiness. He felt purpose. "You're welcome," he said quietly. Then he made the calls that would change everything. The first call Benjamin made was to Ghost. He stepped out onto the front porch, leaving Sarah and Kara in the living room. The street was still quiet, still dark except for a few porch lights 3 houses down. No sirens, no curious neighbors peering through curtains. In neighborhoods like this, people had learned that getting involved only brought trouble to your own doorstep. Ghost answered on the first ring. "Status. Situation contained. I need a cleanup crew. 2 units. Benjamin's voice was calm, professional. This wasn't his first time managing a scene. 1 medical, 1 disposal. Location? Benjamin gave him the address, then added 20-minute window. Maybe less if someone heard the commotion. I'll have people there in 15. What's the disposal level? Benjamin glanced back at the house, thinking about Ray Donovan's body currently lying in the upstairs hallway. Complete. No trace. Understood. And the medical situation? Adult female domestic assault. Facial trauma, possible broken ribs. Needs treatment but can't go to a hospital. Too many questions. Ghost was quiet for a moment, the sound of typing in the background. I've got a doctor on retainer, retired ER physician who doesn't ask questions. I can have him there in 30 minutes. Make it 25. And Ghost? This one stays off the books completely. No records, no files, no digital trail. It's already gone, Ghost said, and the line went dead. Benjamin pocketed his phone and stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. He could still feel the imprint of Kara's small hand in his, still hear Sarah's whispered, "Thank you," echoing in his mind. This was the part most people didn't understand about his world. The violence was quick, sometimes over in seconds. But the aftermath, the cleanup, the careful erasure of evidence, that took time and precision. One mistake, one overlooked detail, and everything could unravel. He pulled out his second phone and called Marcus. "Boss." Marcus answered immediately, voice tense. "Your 30 minutes are almost up. I'm fine, but I need you to do something for me. There's a car in the driveway here, older model sedan, driver's door open. I need it gone within the hour. Take it to Crusher on 5th. Make sure there's nothing left but scrap metal by morning. Consider it done. Anything else?" Benjamin thought for a moment. "Yeah. Pull everything you can find on Ray Donovan. Employment records, known associates, recent movements. I want to know if anyone's going to come looking for him. How deep do you want to dig?" "All the way. If he owes money, if he has family, if he has anyone who might care that he disappeared, I need to know." Marcus was quiet for a beat. "Boss, you're covering tracks on someone who's not one of ours. This personal. Does it matter?" "No, sir. Just making sure I understand the scope." "The scope is total. This never happened. The man never existed. Am I clear?" "Crystal, I'll have a preliminary report by dawn." Benjamin ended the call and went back inside. Sarah was trying to stand, using the couch for support, but her legs kept giving out. Kara hovered beside her, small hands trying to help, but too weak to make a difference. "Don't move," Benjamin said, his tone firm but not unkind. "You might have broken ribs. Moving around will only make it worse." Sarah looked at him with eyes that were already swelling shut. "I need to take care of my daughter." "Your daughter is fine. You're the one who needs care right now." Benjamin crouched down beside them. "I have a doctor coming. He's going to check you out, make sure nothing's seriously damaged. I can't afford a doctor. And if I go to the hospital, they'll ask questions, call the police. This doctor doesn't work at a hospital. And you're not paying for anything." Benjamin's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "He'll be here in about 20 minutes. Until then, try not to move." Kara was staring at him again, those solemn eyes seeing more than a 9-year-old should. "What about Ray?" Benjamin met her gaze steadily. "Ray's gone. He's not coming back. Ever. Did you kill him?" Sarah gasped, but Benjamin didn't flinch. The kid deserved honesty, at least as much as he could give her. I made sure he can't hurt you or your mother again. That's all you need to know. Kara nodded slowly, processing this. Then quieter, good. The word hung in the air between them. A child saying she was glad someone was dead. That's what men like Ray Donovan did to innocence. They twisted it, corrupted it, taught children that violence was sometimes the only solution. Benjamin hated Ray Donovan for a lot of reasons, but that might have been the biggest one. A car pulled up outside, no headlights, engine barely audible. Benjamin moved to the window and peered through the blinds. A black SUV, Marcus behind the wheel. 2 more men got out back, both wearing dark clothes and gloves. His cleanup crew. Benjamin opened the front door and stepped out to meet them. Marcus approached first, his scarred face illuminated by the dim porch light. Vehicle removal team is 2 minutes out. Marcus said quietly, "What's the situation inside?" "1 body, 2nd floor, hallway. Cause of death will read as blunt force trauma if anyone bothers to look, but no one's going to look. Make sure of it." Marcus nodded to the 2 men, who moved past Benjamin into the house without a word. They'd done this before. They knew the drill. The woman and child? Marcus asked, "Staying here for now. Doctor's coming to treat the woman. After that..." Benjamin paused, thinking, after that, we're moving them. Moving them where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere Ray Donovan's associates can't find them if anyone comes looking. Marcus studied Benjamin's face in the darkness. "This isn't our usual kind of operation, boss." "No, it's not. Want to tell me why we're involved?" Benjamin thought about Emma, about the tattoos on his neck, about 12 years of regret, and a little girl who texted a random number because she had no one else to call. "Because I said so. That's reason enough." Marcus held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. I'll start looking at safe house options. How long term are we talking?" "Until I'm satisfied they're secure. Could be weeks. Could be months. Budget. Whatever it takes." Another car arrived, this one a dark blue sedan that looked completely unremarkable. An older man got out, carrying a black medical bag. He moved with the careful economy of someone who'd spent decades in emergency rooms, wasting no motion, no time. Benjamin met him at the door. "Dr. Chun." "Mr. Siegel." The doctor's voice was gravelly, professional. "Ghost said you had a patient for me." Inside, adult female, facial trauma, possible broken ribs. She needs to be stabilized and treated here. No hospital visits. Dr. Chin nodded, like this was the most normal request in the world. "I'll need about an hour. Privacy would be appreciated." Benjamin stepped aside, letting the doctor enter. Through the doorway, he could see Sarah trying to protest that she was fine, that she didn't need help. Dr. Chin was already kneeling beside her, opening his bag, speaking in low, calm tones that seemed to cut through her panic. The cleanup crew came back downstairs, one of them giving Benjamin a brief nod. The body was secured, wrapped, ready for transport. Within 15 minutes, Ray Donovan would be in a vehicle headed for a location where bodies went to disappear. A crematorium that asked no questions. A construction site where concrete will be poured tomorrow. A landfill that processed thousands of tons of waste daily. Benjamin didn't ask which one they'd choose. He didn't need to know. A flatbed tow truck appeared, and within minutes Ray's car was being loaded up, its license plates already removed. The crew worked with silent efficiency, every movement practiced and professional. This was what 20 years of building an empire looked like. Not just soldiers and territory, but a machine that could erase mistakes, cover tracks, make problems disappear. Benjamin had used that machine for a lot of things over the years. Protection rackets, rival eliminations, witness intimidation. This was the first time he'd use it to save someone instead of destroy them. 30 minutes after the first call, the street was quiet again. The cleanup crew was gone. Ray's car was gone. The body was gone. The only evidence that anything had happened was a broken bedroom door and a battered woman being treated by a doctor who didn't officially exist. Benjamin stood in the kitchen, looking at the remnants of the dinner Kara and Sarah had shared before everything went wrong. 2 plates with peanut butter sandwich crusts. A glass of milk, still half full. Homework spread across the table. Math problems in a child's careful handwriting. Normal. They'd been having a normal evening. And then a monster had walked through the door and shattered everything. Benjamin had killed that monster, but he knew from experience that killing monsters didn't erase the damage they caused. Sarah and Kara would carry tonight with them forever. The fear, the violence, the moment when they thought they might die. All he could do now was make sure they were safe, that they had time and space to heal, that no other monsters came looking for them. Dr. Chin emerged from the living room, drying his hands on a towel. 3 cracked ribs, severe facial contusions, minor concussion. She'll need pain medication and rest. I've given her something for the pain and written instructions for follow-up care. Will she recover fully? Physically, yes. Emotionally, Dr. Chin shrugged. That's not my area of expertise. But she's strong, and she has her daughter. That matters. Benjamin nodded. Thank you for coming. Ghost pays well for my discretion. But Mr. Siegel? The doctor fixed him with a penetrating stare. Whatever you're doing here, I hope you know what you're getting into. Saving people is more complicated than eliminating threats. I'm learning that. Dr. Chin left, and Benjamin went back to the living room. Sarah was lying on the couch now, heavily medicated, her breathing slow and even. Kara sat on the floor beside her, holding her mother's hand, refusing to leave her side. The little girl looked up at Benjamin with exhausted eyes. What happens now? Good question. Benjamin had eliminated the immediate threat, secured the scene, arranged for medical care. But what came next? He couldn't just walk away and hope everything worked out. Ray might have friends, might have told someone where he was going. The house wasn't safe. Now, Benjamin said, making a decision as he spoke, we get you and your mother somewhere safe. Somewhere no one can find you unless I want them to. Like witness protection? Smart kid. Something like that. But better. Why are you helping us? Benjamin looked at her, this brave little girl who'd saved her mother by texting a stranger. He thought about telling her the truth. About Emma. About the tattoos. About 12 years of regret. Instead, he said, because you asked for help, and I was in a position to give it. Kara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Just like that. Okay. She trusted him because she had no other choice. Or maybe because children were better at seeing the truth in people than adults were. Benjamin pulled out his phone one more time and called Marcus. Safe house, he said when Marcus answered. I need it ready by morning. Full security, stock kitchen, clean identities if necessary. And Marcus? This is priority 1. Everything else can wait. Understood, boss. I'll have options for you within the hour. Benjamin ended the call and sat down in a chair across from where Sarah and Kara huddled together. The house was quiet now. The storm had passed. But Benjamin knew from experience that the aftermath of storms often lasted longer than the violence itself. He would see them through it. All of it, however long it took. Because tonight, Benjamin Siegel had stopped being just a sovereign of shadows. Tonight, he becomes something else. A guardian, a protector, a man who'd found purpose in the one place he'd never expected to find it. In a text message from a terrified child who dialed a random number and reached the one person who could save her. An hour passed before Sarah was coherent enough to speak in full sentences. The pain medication Dr. Chun had given her was strong, enough to dull the worst of the physical agony, but not enough to knock her out completely. She lay on the couch with ice packs wrapped in dish towels pressed against her face, her breathing shallow and careful to avoid aggravating her cracked ribs. Kara had finally fallen asleep, curled up in the armchair across the room with a blanket Benjamin had found in the hall closet. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving her small body exhausted and limp. She looked even younger asleep, innocent in a way that made Benjamin's chest tighten. Benjamin sat in the kitchen, giving Sarah space but staying close enough to hear if she needed anything. He'd made coffee, more out of habit than desire, and now he stared at the cup cooling in his hands. Mr. Siegel? Sarah's voice was soft, slurred slightly from the medication. Benjamin set down his coffee and moved to the living room doorway. "You should rest," he said. "I've been resting." She tried to shift on the couch, winced, then gave up. "I need to ask you something." Benjamin pulled the chair closer and sat down, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "Ask." Sarah was quiet for a moment, her swollen eyes studying his face. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't angry or accusatory, just genuinely curious, maybe even confused. "Why did you come? You don't know us. You could have ignored that text, blocked the number, gone on with your life. But you came. You!" She paused, struggling with the words. "You saved us. Why?" Benjamin had known this question was coming, had been preparing for it since the moment he'd walked into this house. But now, sitting across from this battered woman who'd nearly lost everything tonight, he found prepared answers weren't enough. "I had a daughter," he said quietly. Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Had? I still have one, technically, but I haven't seen her in 12 years. Benjamin touched the tattoos on his neck. That automatic gesture he did whenever Emma crossed his mind. "Her name is Emma. She was 6 the last time I held her." "What happened?" "I made choices. Bad ones. I built a life that wasn't safe for a child, and when her mother tried to get me to leave that life, I didn't listen, so she left me instead. Took Emma and disappeared into witness protection." Benjamin's voice was steady, factual, like he was reading from a case file. "The court declared me an unfit parent, said my lifestyle posed a danger to my daughter's well-being. They weren't wrong. Sarah's good," I widened slightly. "Witness protection. Then you're—" "Yes, I'm exactly what you think I am." Benjamin met her gaze directly. "I run a criminal organization. I've hurt people, killed people, done things that would put me in prison for life if the law ever caught up to me. I'm not a good man, Mrs. Paul. I'm probably the kind of man you'd cross the street to avoid if you saw me coming. But you saved us." "I did." "Why?" Sarah asked again, more insistent this time. "If you're all those things, if you've done all that, why would you risk everything to help 2 strangers? Benjamin leaned back in the chair, the old wood creaking under his weight. How'd he explain this? How'd he put into words a moment when a text message from a terrified child had cracked open something he'd thought was permanently sealed? "Because your daughter reminded me of mine," he said finally. "Because when I read those words, 'He's beating my mama. I'm under the bed. Please come,' I saw Emma. I saw her hiding from the violence I brought into our lives. I saw her scared and alone because her father chose power over her safety." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for me. I made my choices. I live with them." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "But your daughter didn't make any choices. She's innocent, and she was in danger. When I saw that text, I realized something. I couldn't save Emma. I couldn't be the father she needed. But maybe I could save Kara. Maybe I could be what she needed, even if it was just for one night." "You did more than save her," Sarah whispered. "You saved both of us. Ray, Donovan would have killed you tonight. You know that." Sarah nodded, a tear sliding down her bruised cheek. "I know. I've known for months that if he ever came back, if he ever got inside the house again—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Benjamin understood. Some truths were too heavy to speak aloud. "Can I ask you something else?" Sarah said after a moment. "And please, I'm not judging. I just need to understand." "Go ahead. What happened to Ray? Where is he?" Benjamin had expected this question too. He could lie, soften it, give her plausible deniability. But she deserved the truth. She'd earned it by surviving, by protecting her daughter for as long as she could. "He's gone," Benjamin said simply. "Permanently." "You killed him." "Yes." Sarah was quiet, processing this. Benjamin watched her face, looking for signs of horror or moral outrage. Instead, "The police won't find anything, won't even know to look. As far as the world is concerned, Ray Donovan got drunk, got in his car, and disappeared. People like him do that sometimes. No one will question it. Sarah absorbed this, her breathing shallow and pained. You've done this before. Made people disappear. Yes. How many? Benjamin considered lying, then decided against it. Enough that I've lost count. And tonight? Was I just another job? Another problem to solve? No. Benjamin's voice was harder now, more intense. Tonight was different. Tonight was personal. Because of your daughter. Because of what I failed to be for my daughter. Benjamin leaned forward, his eyes locked on Sarah's. I spent 12 years building an empire on violence and fear. I told myself it was necessary, that this was just a world I lived in. But the truth is, I chose it. I chose power over family. I chose control over love. And I lost everything that mattered. You can still find her. Your daughter. She's 18 now, you said. She can make her own choices. Benjamin shook his head. Emma doesn't know me. Her mother made sure of that. And even if she wanted to meet me, what would I say? Hi, I'm your father, the man who valued his criminal empire more than watching you grow up. What kind of reunion would that be? An honest one, Sarah said quietly. Maybe that's enough. Maybe, but I'm not ready to face that rejection yet. Maybe I never will be. Benjamin stood up, moving to the window, looking out at the quiet street. So instead, I do this. I answer texts from scared children. I make monsters disappear. I use the resources I built for destruction to protect people who need it. Justice, not law, Sarah murmured. Benjamin turned to look at her. What? That's what this is, isn't it? You didn't call the police. You didn't wait for the courts. You took justice into your own hands because you knew the system wouldn't protect us. Sarah's voice was stronger now, more certain. You did what the law couldn't or wouldn't do. The law has rules, Benjamin said. Procedures. Due process. All important things. But sometimes by the time the law gets around to protecting someone, that person is already dead. Like I would have been tonight. Yes. And Kara. Yes. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her damaged face contemplative. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. My father used to say that some sins are too dark for daylight, that some wrongs can't wait for judges and juries because by the time justice arrives, it's too late. He was a pastor, believed in forgiveness and redemption, but even he understood that sometimes someone has to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Benjamin felt something shift in his chest. Your father sounds like a wise man. He died when I was 16. Sarah's good eye focused on Benjamin with startling clarity despite the medication. But I think he would have understood what you did tonight. I think he would have called it necessary. Or he would have called it murder. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's what makes it necessary. Sarah tried to sit up straighter, gasped at the pain, then settled back. Mr. Siegel, I'm not going to pretend I understand your world. I'm not going to pretend that I'm comfortable knowing what you've done, what you're capable of. But I'm going to tell you this. You saved my daughter's life tonight. You saved mine. And I will be grateful for that for the rest of my life, no matter what it cost or what it means. Benjamin felt the weight of her words settle over him like a physical thing. Gratitude, acceptance, understanding. Things he hadn't expected to find in this small house with its broken door and blood-stained floor. You don't owe me anything, he said. Yes, I do. I owe you everything. Sarah's voice was fierce now, cutting through the pain. And I'm going to ask you for something else, something that might be harder than what you've already done. What's that? Don't disappear. Don't walk away and leave us to pick up the pieces alone. She glanced at Kara, still sleeping in the chair. She's going to have nightmares. She's going to be scared. And she's going to ask about you, about the man who came when she called for help. I need you to be there when she asks. I need you to show her that asking for help is the right choice. Benjamin felt something crack inside him. Some wall he'd built that was suddenly not strong enough to hold back the tide. Mrs. Paul, I'm not the kind of man you want around your daughter. Maybe not, but you're the kind of man who answered when she needed help. That matters more than you think. Sarah's voice softened. You said you couldn't be there for your daughter, that you failed her. Maybe that's true, but you're here now, and we need you. Benjamin looked at Kara, at this little girl who'd been brave enough to text a stranger in her darkest moment. He thought about Emma, about 12 years of absence and regret. He thought about the tattoos on his neck and what they represented. Scars, loss, choices that couldn't be undone. But maybe, just maybe, choices that could be redeemed. I'll be here, Benjamin said quietly, for as long as you need me. Even though we're strangers, you stopped being strangers the moment your daughter texted me, the moment I decided to answer. Benjamin moved back to the chair, sat down. What happened tonight changed something. I'm not sure what yet, but I'm going to see it through. Sarah smiled, a painful expression that pulled at her split lip. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The next part is going to be complicated. What next part? The part where I move you both somewhere safe. Where I make sure no one associated with Ray comes looking for answers. Where I set you up with new identities if necessary. New life if you want it. Benjamin's voice was calm, matter of fact. I told you, Mrs. Paul. I'm seeing this through. All of it. You do that? For us. I've done worse for worse reasons. Benjamin allowed himself a small smile. Might as well do something good for once. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't from pain. Your daughter, Emma, if she knew what you did tonight, what you're doing for us, I think she'd be proud. Benjamin's hand went to his neck again, tracing the tattoos that hid his scars. Maybe, or maybe she'd be terrified of who her father became. Maybe she'd understand that people are more than their worst choices, that even men who've done terrible things can still do good. Sarah's voice was getting drowsy now, the medication pulling her back towards sleep. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not erasing the past, but building something better in the present. Benjamin sat with those words as Sarah's breathing deepened and she slipped back into medicated sleep. Around him, the house was quiet except for the soft sounds of two people breathing. Two people he'd saved. Two people who'd somehow become his responsibility. He pulled out his phone and looked at the original text message, still saved in his encrypted phone. He's beating my mama. I'm under the bed. Please come. 4 simple sentences that had changed everything. Benjamin Siegel had spent 20 years dealing in death and darkness. He'd built an empire on fear and violence. He'd lost his daughter because he couldn't walk away from that life. But tonight, he'd learned something. The power he'd accumulated, the resources he'd gathered, the network he'd built, all of it could be used for something other than destruction. It could protect. It could save. It could be a shield instead of a sword. Some sins were too dark for daylight. Sarah's father had said, some wrongs couldn't wait for judges and juries. Benjamin had spent his life committing those sins, embracing that darkness. But maybe, just maybe, he could use that same darkness to protect the light. Justice, not law. It was a dangerous philosophy, one that could justify terrible things in the wrong hands. But in the right hands, at the right time, for the right reasons, maybe it was exactly what the world needed. Benjamin looked at Kara, still sleeping peacefully, safe for the first time in hours. He thought about Emma, wherever she was, whatever life she was living without him. He couldn't change the past, couldn't undo his failures as a father, but he could be here now, for this child, for this family. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was justice. Kara woke up screaming. It was 3:47 a.m., and for a terrible, disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The chair she'd fallen asleep in felt wrong, unfamiliar. The room was too dark. Her heart hammered against her ribs as fragments of nightmare and memory crashed together in her mind. Footsteps, Ray's voice, the sound of her mother crying, the feeling of being trapped under bed with nowhere to run. Kara, a calm voice cut through the panic. Not Ray's angry shout, not her mother's frightened whisper. Someone else, someone who'd been sitting in the kitchen, who'd heard her cry out and move quickly but quietly into the living room. Benjamin. Kara's breathing came in gasps as her eyes adjusted to the darkness. She could see him now, a tall silhouette standing a few feet away, not approaching, not crowding her. Just there. You're safe, he said quietly. You're in your living room. Your mother is on the couch. Ray is gone. You're safe. Kara's hands gripped the armrest of the chair, her whole body trembling. I dreamed he came back. I dreamed he found me again, and you weren't here, and I'm here. Benjamin moved closer, but slowly, giving her time to process his presence. And Ray's never coming back. I promise you that. How can you promise? How do you know? Her voice cracked, sounding even younger than her 9 years. Benjamin crouched down, so he was at her eye level, not looming over her. In the dim light from the kitchen, Kara could see his face properly now. The tattoos on his neck, the expensive suit that was rumpled from hours of sitting and waiting, the eyes that had looked so cold and terrifying when he confronted Ray, but now held something different, something gentler. Because I made sure of it, Benjamin said simply. I know that's not an answer that makes sense to someone your age. I know you probably have a lot of questions about what happened tonight. But what I need you to understand is this. Ray Donovan will never hurt you or your mother again. That's not a hope or a wish. It's a fact. Kara stared at him, her mind trying to process what he was saying and what he wasn't saying. She was 9, not stupid. She understood what made sure of it meant. She'd seen enough TV shows, heard enough whispered conversations between adults who thought kids weren't listening. You killed him, she whispered. Benjamin didn't flinch from her gaze. Yes. Kara waited for the guilt to come, the horror that she was supposed to feel when someone died. But all she felt was relief. And then guilt about feeling relieved. And then confusion about all of it. Am I bad for being glad? She asked, her voice tiny. No. Benjamin's answer was immediate and firm. You're not bad. You're a little girl who is terrified and in danger. Being glad that danger is gone doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. My teacher says violence is never the answer. Your teacher is right most of the time. Violence shouldn't be the first choice or the second or even the 10th. But sometimes. Benjamin paused, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes there are people in the world who only understand violence, who won't stop hurting others unless someone makes them stop. Ray was one of those people. Kara thought about this, about all the times Ray had come to their house before tonight, before Mama finally kicked him out. The yelling, the holes in the walls, the way Mama would wear long sleeves even in summer to hide the bruises. Mama called the police once, Kara said quietly. They came and talked to Ray, and he was nice to them, said it was all a misunderstanding. They left, and he got even madder. Mama said calling them made everything worse. Benjamin's jaw tightened. The system doesn't always work the way it should, especially for people who don't have money or connections. But you made it stop. You made him stop forever. I did. Kara looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly in her lap. When I was under the bed, when Ray was looking for me, I thought I was going to die. I thought he was going to find me and hurt me, and then hurt Mama worse because I tried to hide. But you didn't just hide, Benjamin said. You asked for help. That took courage. I just typed random numbers. I didn't even know if anyone would answer. But someone did answer. I did. Benjamin's voice was steady, grounding. And I want you to remember something, Kara. What you did tonight. Reaching out for help even when you were terrified. Even when you didn't know if anyone would come. That was one of the bravest things a person can do. Tears started sliding down Kara's cheeks. I was so scared. I know. I thought we were going to die. I know. Benjamin reached into his jacket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, offering it to her. But you didn't. You survived. You and your mother both survived because you were brave and smart and you didn't give up. Kara took the handkerchief and wiped her eyes. It was soft, expensive, monogrammed with initials she couldn't make out in the darkness. Are you going to leave now? Now that Ray's gone. Do you want me to leave? Kara thought about it. This man was a stranger. She'd known him for only a few hours. He'd killed someone in her house. And even though that someone was Ray, even though she was glad Ray was gone, it was still scary. Everything about Benjamin Siegel should have been terrifying. But he'd come when she called. He'd save them. And right now, sitting in this dark living room with her mother unconscious and the memory of footsteps and shouting still echoing in her head, Benjamin felt like the only solid thing in a world that had tilted sideways. "No," she whispered. "Please don't leave yet." "Then I won't." Benjamin settled back, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, giving her space but staying close enough to talk. "Not until you and your mother are safe. Really safe. Not just tonight, but tomorrow and the day after and all the days after that." "How long will that take?" "I don't know yet. A few weeks, maybe longer. We're going to move you somewhere safer. Somewhere Ray's friends can't find you if they come looking. Somewhere you can sleep without worrying about footsteps in the hallway." Kara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "Will you come with us? To the safe place. I'll make sure you get there safely. And I'll check on you, make sure you have everything you need. But you won't stay." It wasn't a question, just a statement of fact. Kara might be 9, but she understood how the world worked. Men like Benjamin didn't stay. They solved problems and moved on to the next one. "I have responsibilities," Benjamin said carefully. "People who work for me, obligations I can't walk away from. But that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you. It means I'll be watching from a distance, making sure nothing bad happens to you. Like a guardian angel." Benjamin almost smiled at that. "I don't think anyone's ever called me an angel before. But you saved us. That's what angels do. Angels are supposed to be good. I'm not good, Kara. I've done a lot of bad things in my life. Hurt people who didn't deserve it. Made choices I'm not proud of." He paused, his hand unconsciously moving to the tattoos on his neck. "But tonight, I made a choice I am proud of. I chose to help you and your mother, and I'm going to keep making that choice until you're both safe and settled." Kara studied his face in the darkness. This complicated man who'd appeared when she needed him most. "Why did you come? Really? You could have ignored my text." Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable than Kara had heard it all night. "I had a daughter once. Her name is Emma. She was about your age when I lost her. She died?" "No, she's alive, but I don't get to see her. I made too many bad choices, and her mother took her away to keep her safe. From me, from the life I lead." Benjamin's eyes were distant, looking at something Kara couldn't see. "When I saw your text, when I read those words, 'He's beating my mama,' I saw Emma, I saw the daughter I failed, and I realized I couldn't fail again, not when I had the power to help. So you saved us for her, for Emma. Maybe I saved you for you, because you deserve to be saved, because your mother deserved to be saved, because some things are just right, and letting you die would have been wrong." Benjamin looked at her directly. "Does it matter why I came? I'm here. You're safe. That's what counts." Kara thought about this, about random numbers typed in desperation, about a stranger who answered, about the difference between the law that hadn't protected them and the justice that had. "I'm glad you came," she said finally. "I'm glad it was you who got my text and not someone else." "So am I?" They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the darkness no longer feeling threatening with Benjamin nearby. Kara could hear her mother breathing on the couch, slow and steady. The pain medication was keeping her asleep, which was good. She needed rest. They both did. "Mr. Siegel? You can call me Benjamin, if you want." "Benjamin." Kara tested the name, finding it fit. "When we move to the safe place, can I keep your number? So I can text you if I need help again." Something shifted in Benjamin's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Yes." "And Kara, you don't have to wait until you need help. You can text me anytime. About anything. School. Friends. Nothing important. Whatever you want." "Really? Really? I might not always answer right away, but I'll always answer eventually." Kara felt something warm spread through her chest, pushing back against the fear and the nightmares. "Thank you for everything." "You're welcome, Benjamin." "Yes." "Do you think your daughter knows you're a good person, even though you did bad things?" Benjamin was quiet for so long that Kara thought maybe she shouldn't have asked. But then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion he was trying to control. I don't know. I hope so, but probably not. Maybe someday you can tell her. About tonight. About helping us. Maybe someday, Benjamin agreed, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Kara wanted to say more, wanted to tell him that Emma would be proud if she knew, that saving people mattered more than mistakes, that everyone deserved second chances. But she was 9, and she didn't have the words for all that. So instead, she said, I think you're a good person, even if you don't think so. Benjamin looked at her. This little girl who'd survived a nightmare and was somehow still brave enough to offer comfort to a man she barely knew. Thank you, Kara. That means more than you know. Kara felt her eyelids getting heavy again. The adrenaline was finally wearing off for real this time, and exhaustion was pulling her back towards sleep. But this time, the darkness didn't feel threatening. Because Benjamin was there. Because Ray was gone. Because for the first time in years, Kara felt truly, completely safe. Will you stay here? While I sleep? She asked, fighting the pull of exhaustion. I'll stay right here, Benjamin promised. I'll be here when you wake up. And if you have another nightmare, I'll be here for that too. Promise? I promise. Kara let her eyes close, let the exhaustion win. Just before sleep claimed her, she murmured, You're not a bad person, Benjamin. Bad people don't come when little girls ask for help. Benjamin sat against the wall, watching over Kara as she slept, and wondered if she was right. He'd spent 20 years being a monster, doing monstrous things. But tonight, he'd been something else. Tonight, he'd been exactly what a terrified child needed him to be. Maybe that didn't erase the past. Maybe it didn't make him good. But maybe, just maybe it was a start. The light from the kitchen spilled into the living room, warm and gentle, pushing back the darkness. Benjamin looked at Kara, peaceful now in sleep, and at Sarah on the couch, battered but breathing, both of them alive because he'd answered a text message. He thought about Emma, somewhere out there in the world, living a life he'd never be part of. He thought about the tattoos on his neck, each one a scar, each one a story of pain and loss. But maybe those scars didn't have to define him. Maybe he could write new stories. Better ones. Stories about being the light in someone's darkness, even when you felt like darkness yourself. Stories about answering when someone called for help, even when you thought you had nothing left to give. Stories about choosing to be better, one choice at a time, even when better seemed impossible. Benjamin touched the tattoos on his neck one last time, then let his hand fall. The scars would always be there. The past couldn't be erased. But the future was still unwritten. And tonight, Benjamin Siegel had written the first sentence of a different story. One where monsters could become guardians, where darkness could shelter light, where a man who'd lost everything could find purpose in protecting two people he'd never met. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later. Benjamin sat in his Mercedes 2 blocks from Riverside Academy. Engine off. Windows tinted dark enough that no one passing by would notice him. The morning was crisp and bright. Early September sunshine cutting through the autumn air with that particular quality that marked the beginning of a school year. He checked his watch. 7:52 a.m. 8 minutes until the first bell. Through his windshield, he could see the school's front entrance. Riverside Academy was everything the old school hadn't been. Private, well-funded, with security gates and manicured lawns. The kind of place where parents drove BMWs and Mercedes, where uniforms were required and college prep started in middle school. The kind of place Sarah Paul never could have afforded on a diner waitress's salary. But an anonymous donor had changed that. A very generous anonymous donor who not only covered Kara's full tuition, but had also established a scholarship fund to her name. The school had been thrilled to accept such a bright young student with such tragic circumstances. A fresh start, they called it. An opportunity. Benjamin called it insurance. The safe house had worked for the first month. A comfortable apartment in a secure building across town, far from Ray Donovan's old neighborhood. Far from anyone who might come looking with questions. Marcus had arranged everything. New locks, security cameras, a panic button connected directly to Benjamin's personal line. But Sarah had wanted more than safety. She'd wanted normal. She wanted her daughter to have friends and routines, and a future that didn't involve looking over her shoulder. So Benjamin had given her that too. The new house was in a quiet suburb, nothing flashy but solid. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, good schools nearby. Purchased through a shell company, title held by an LLC that couldn't be traced back to Benjamin or his organization. Sarah's name on the lease. Her credit somehow miraculously improved, her rental history suddenly spotless. Ghost had handled the digital cleanup. Marcus had handled the logistics. And Benjamin had handled the cost, which was substantial but meaningless compared to the fortune he'd accumulated over 2 decades of criminal enterprise. Money he'd earned through violence and fear, now funding a little girl's education and her mother's fresh start. The irony wasn't lost on him. A car pulled up to the school entrance. A blue Honda, for years old, reliable but not remarkable. Sarah was behind the wheel, and Kara sat in the passenger seat, wearing her new uniform. Navy blue skirt, white blouse, the Riverside Academy crest embroidered on the pocket. Benjamin leaned forward slightly, watching as Sarah parked, and turned to say something to her daughter. Even from 2 blocks away, even through tinted windows, he could read the nervousness in Kara's posture. First day at a new school, new classmates who didn't know her history, didn't know about the night a man had broken into her house and tried to kill her mother. A clean slate, but also terrifying in its newness. Sarah got out of the car and walked around to Kara's side. Opening the door, they stood together on the sidewalk. Sarah's hand on Kara's shoulder, saying something Benjamin couldn't hear but could imagine. "You'll be fine. You're brave. You survived worse than this." Because she had. They both had. Sarah looked better now. The bruises had faded months ago. The cracked ribs had healed. The split lip was just a memory. She'd gained some weight, lost a hollowed-out look of someone living on the edge of survival. She smiled more, laughed sometimes when Benjamin called to check in. She'd even started dating again, though she'd been careful about it, making sure any man who came around was thoroughly vetted by Benjamin's people first. She'd asked permission for that, the vetting, and Benjamin had agreed without hesitation. Better safe than sorry. Better paranoid than dead. Kara straightened her backpack and took a deep breath Benjamin could see from 2 blocks away. Then she hugged her mother, quick and tight, before turning toward the school entrance. She made it 3 steps before stopping and turning back. Benjamin tensed, wondering if she'd change her mind, if the fear was too much, if she needed her mother to take her home where it was safe and known. But Kara didn't run back to Sarah. Instead, she pulled out her phone and typed something quickly, then hit send before sliding the phone back into her pocket. Benjamin's encrypted phone buzzed in his jacket. He pulled it out, already knowing what he'd find. First day. Wish me luck. A text from Kara. Not a cry for help this time. Not desperation or fear. Just a little girl reaching out to someone she knew was watching. Someone she knew cared. Benjamin typed back with careful precision. You don't need luck. You're the bravest person I know. But good luck anyway. He watched as Kara checked her phone, saw the small smile that crossed her face, saw her shoulders straighten with renewed confidence. She waved to her mother one more time, then walked through the school's entrance with her head held high. Sarah stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer, watching her daughter disappear into the building. Then she pulled out her own phone and typed something. Benjamin's phone buzzed again. Thank you for being here. Even though I can't see you, I know you are. Sarah had figured it out within the first month. Had noticed the too convenient timing of his check-in calls, always right after she'd had a difficult moment or Kara had woken from a nightmare. Had realized that the security cameras Benjamin had installed weren't just recording. They were being monitored in real time. She'd asked him about it during one of their weekly phone calls. Are you watching us? Benjamin had considered lying, decided against it. Yes. How often? Often enough to know you're safe. Not so often that it's invasive. There had been a pause. Then, good. I'm glad you're watching. No accusations of stalking or invasion of privacy. Just relief that someone was paying attention. That if something went wrong, if another Ray Donovan somehow found them, Benjamin would know. He typed back to Sarah now. Always. Call if you need anything. Sarah got back in her Honda and drove away, probably headed to her new job at a law firm downtown. Receptionist, decent pay, benefits, regular hours. Ghost had helped with that too, making sure her resume landed on the right desk, making sure the interview went smoothly. Benjamin put his phone away and started the Mercedes. His work here was done for today. Marcus would arrive in 30 minutes to take the next surveillance shift, part of the rotation Benjamin had established. Someone always watching, always ready, always positioned to respond if needed. The Shadow Network, repurposed from intelligence gathering and territory control to something simpler and infinitely more important, protection. As Benjamin pulled away from the curb, his phone rang, not the encrypted one, his regular business line. He answered it. Siegel. Boss, we got a situation at the harbor. It was Vincent, one of his captains. The shipment from Miami. Customs is asking questions. We might need to reroute. Business. The empire that still required his attention. The criminal enterprise that funded everything else. Benjamin had worried, in those first few weeks after saving Kara, that helping him would somehow make him soft, would distract him from the necessary brutality of his real life. But if anything, the opposite had happened. Benjamin had become more focused, more efficient, more ruthless when dealing with threats to his organization, because now he had something to protect beyond just power and territory. He had people who depended on him, people he'd promised to keep safe. And Benjamin Siegel always kept his promises. Reroute through Baltimore, Benjamin said, his voice hard and commanding. Use the alternate contact. And Vincent? Anyone who talks to customs about our business doesn't talk to anyone else after that. Make that clear. Understood, boss. Benjamin ended the call and drove through the morning traffic, splitting his attention between the road and his thoughts. This was his life now, a strange balance between two worlds. The sovereign of shadows who ruled the underworld with calculated violence, and the silent guardian who watched over a 9-year-old girl and her mother from a distance. Most people would say the two roles were incompatible, that you couldn't be both monster and protector, couldn't deal in death and still shelter life. But Benjamin had learned something over these 6 months. The power he'd built, the resources he'd accumulated, the fear his name commanded, all of it made him more effective at both roles, not less. He could protect Kara and Sarah precisely because he was dangerous. Because no one would dare threaten them if they knew who was watching. Because the same network that moved drugs and guns through the city could also track down threats before they materialized. His phone buzzed again. The encrypted one. Another text from Kara. My teacher seems nice. The classroom has big windows. I can see trees outside. Benjamin smiled, something he did more often now. Kara had been texting him regularly for months. Little updates about her life. Questions about his day, which he answered vaguely. Observations about the world around her. She never mentioned that night 6 months ago unless she had nightmares, which had become less frequent as time passed. She was healing. They both were. Benjamin typed back. Trees are good. Pay attention in class. I want to hear about what you learned today. Okay. Talk to you later. Benjamin put the phone away and continued driving toward his office, toward meetings with dangerous men about dangerous business. But part of his mind stayed with Kara, with that little girl walking through her new school with courage she'd earned the hard way. He thought about Emma, as he did most days. She was 18 and a half now, legally an adult, legally able to contact him if she wanted to. She hadn't. Benjamin had thought about reaching out, had Ghost track her down to a college in Oregon, pre-med program, good grades, normal life far away from her father's world. He could send a letter, an email, show up on campus, and try to explain 12 years of absence. But he didn't, because maybe the kindest thing he could do for Emma was stay away. Let her have the clean, safe life her mother had fought to give her. Don't drag her back into the darkness. But Kara was different. Kara had called him into her life, had texted a random number and gotten Benjamin Siegel. She knew what he was, what he'd done, and she'd chosen to keep him in her life anyway, had made him promise not to disappear. So he hadn't. Every week, He checked in. Every month, he adjusted their security protocols. Every day, someone from his organization watched over them, making sure they were safe. The Silent Watcher, Marcus had started calling him, a nickname that spread through the organization, whispered with a mixture of confusion and respect. Their boss, the cold-blooded sovereign of shadows, spending resources and manpower to protect two people who had no connection to the business. Some of his captains thought he'd gone soft. A few had even implied it to his face. Benjamin had dealt with those implications swiftly and brutally, making it clear that his commitment to Kara and Sarah didn't diminish his willingness to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. If anything, it enhanced it, because now he had something worth protecting beyond just power. He had purpose. Benjamin pulled into the underground garage of his building and parked in his reserved spot. The elevator ride up to his penthouse office was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, Marcus was waiting. "Morning, boss. The girl made it to school okay?" "She did." "Good. We've got the surveillance rotation set for the next month. I'll handle mornings. Chin takes afternoons. Rodriguez is evenings. And the background checks on the new teachers? All clean. No connections to Donovan. No red flags. The school security is decent, but I've got our people positioned nearby just in case." Benjamin nodded, satisfied. "Good work." Marcus hesitated, then asked a question he'd been dancing around for months. "Boss, how long are we going to keep this up? The protection detail, the surveillance, the financial support. I'm not questioning your reasons, but at some point, doesn't the girl need to stand on her own?" Benjamin thought about that question, about Kara's text that morning, about her smile when she read his response, about the courage it had taken for her to walk into that school. "She does stand on her own," Benjamin said quietly. "She's been standing on her own since she was terrified under a bed and still brave enough to ask for help. The protection isn't because she's weak. It's because she deserves to feel safe while she's being strong." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding. "And the mother?" "Sarah's doing fine. New job, new life. In another year, maybe two, she won't need our help anymore. But until then, we keep watching. And after, when they don't need us anymore." Benjamin turned to look out the window at the city below, at the empire he'd built, at the streets he controlled. After, we find someone else who needs help. Someone else texting random numbers in the dark, hoping someone will answer. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You're turning the Shadow Network into some kind of vigilante protection service?" "I'm turning it into what it should have been all along. Power use for something other than just getting more power." Benjamin's hand went to his neck, tracing the tattoos that hid his scars. "I spent 20 years hurting people. Maybe it's time I spent the next 20 protecting them. That's not exactly our business model, boss." "Then maybe it's time to expand our business model." Benjamin turned from the window, his expression hardening back into the mask he wore for business. "The criminal enterprise continues as normal. The money keeps flowing. The territory stays secure. Anyone who challenges us gets dealt with. But we're also going to start paying attention to people like Kara and Sarah. People who fall through the cracks. People the law can't or won't protect. You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. I want you to set up a separate division. Off the books. Completely isolated from the main operations. A team whose only job is monitoring for situations like Kara's. Domestic violence cases, kids in danger, people who need help and have nowhere else to turn." Marcus looked stunned. "Boss, we're not heroes. I know that, but we could be something other than just monsters." Benjamin's voice was firm, final. "Set up, Marcus. That's an order." "Yes, sir." After Marcus left, Benjamin sat his chair and pulled out his phone, looking at Kara's text again. "My teacher seems nice. The classroom has big windows. I can see trees outside. Simple words. An ordinary observation from an ordinary day at school. The kind of text 1,000 kids probably sent to their parents every morning. But to Benjamin, it meant everything. Because 6 months ago, Kara had been hiding under a bed in the dark, certain she was going to die. And now she was sitting in a classroom with windows and trees, learning and living and being the 9-year-old girl she deserved to be. Benjamin had done that. His power, his resources, his willingness to cross lines that others wouldn't cross. All of it had given Kara the chance to have a normal life. And if he could do it for her, he could do it for others. The tattoos on his neck would always be there, marking the scars, telling the stories of who he'd been. But maybe he could write new stories too. Better ones. Stories about being the silent watcher who stood between the innocent and the darkness. Stories about answering desperate texts from terrified children. Stories about monsters who chose to become guardians. Benjamin Siegel touched the tattoos one last time, then turned his computer and opened the file Marcus had started. Potential cases. People who needed help. He had work to do. And for the first time in 20 years, it was work that made him feel like something other than just a monster. It made him feel human.